Well, a Fox Business alert. Governor Jan Brewer is filing Arizona's first brief appealing that federal judge's ruling that put the most controversial elements of Arizona's new immigration law on hold. The governor saying Judge Susan Bolton abused her discretion by applying the wrong legal standards to the ruling. This as illegals are taking more risks to enter the U.S. A growing number of them are now finding their way to American shores via the 400-square-mile ocean that stretches from Tijuana, Mexico, all the way to Los Angeles. Former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales says this is further proof the Obama administration is failing to live up to its responsibility enforcing immigration policy. I'm very honored to have him. He joins us exclusively from Lubbock, Texas. Welcome, Judge, Mr. Attorney General. Very good to have you.
It's good to be with you.
What do you make of what the Arizona governor is doing? Again, as you legal experts tell me, this is perfunctory and expected. But where do you think this is going?
I think it's going to the Supreme Court. I think every legal expert expects this case to go to the Supreme Court, quite frankly. And, you know, the district court decision, I think you'd rather win at the district court level, but what really counts is what happens at the Supreme Court. And, you know, we've got smart lawyers on both sides, and it's hard to predict where this case is going to end up. As I learned working in the administration, it's not enough to simply be right on the law, to believe that you're right on the law. You've got to believe that you have 5 votes in that Supreme Court. And so both sides, I'm sure, are weighing very, very carefully where each of the justices, how receptive they may be to their arguments that are going to be included in their briefs that they file with the Supreme Court. I do want to get into the mechanics of the Arizona law with you, sir. But first of all, stepping back, if it were to go to the Supreme Court, and many others concur with your point that it will, it rests pretty much on federal versus states' rights and responsibilities, right? Arizona is saying, in fact, acknowledging, I believe, yes, this is a federal responsibility, but you guys botched it. We had to deal with it. And the story, if you were dealing with it, we would never have had to intervene in the first place. How will that fly with Supreme Court justices? Well, that's very hard to predict, quite frankly. As I understand the Arizona law, it really is a law of concurrent jurisdiction. They have made illegal at the state level what the federal government makes illegal at the federal level. And that's the argument that the legal theory on which the Arizona law is premised on. And you're absolutely right. The federal government has come into court saying that in the area of immigration, the federal government is supreme in this area, and we have preempted the ability and the authority of states to take action. And one of the things that I've said repeatedly is that with this claim of authority comes responsibility. And it seems to me that the real story here is not what Arizona has tried to do. It's not what the district court judge has done in this case. The real story is what the federal government has failed to do at the federal level, which is to enforce, to implement effective immigration policy. You have people, you know, demonstrating in Arizona. I don't understand why they're not demonstrating in Washington, because that is where the real failure of leadership has occurred, quite frankly. Many argue, regardless, and the reason why the administration intervened as it did, sir, is that this could lead to racial profiling, and that, no offense to you, I mean, if you look Hispanic or of a different skin, then you're going to be pulled over. And whether it's Sheriff Joe Arpaio or these others who are being closely scrutinized by the Justice Department and others, that is a very slippery slope. What do you say? Well, what I say is I condemn racial profiling. And if, in fact, the purpose of this law is to implement racial profiling, then it should be struck down. But we don't know whether or not this is going to result in racial profiling until we see how the law is implemented. And the best evidence of that is that in the brief filed by the Obama Justice Department, there was not a discussion about racial profiling. The merits of the brief were on the issue of whether or not the federal government has preempted the states from acting in this area. Again, we don't really know whether or not this law would result in racial profiling until we see how it's implemented. I will remind your viewers, however, that the law explicitly bans the use of race in making stops. So the law is written in a way to discourage, to outlaw racial profiling. But those who are concerned about it, Judge, say very hard to avoid if there's one case where a sheriff got too aggressive or picked up someone of color, and the person comes back, had all the proper paperwork, he sues, she sues, then you've got a grenade. What do you say? I certainly agree that listen, 99% of police officers do their jobs with integrity.
Oh, you're right. It just takes 1%. Just takes 1%. But
it takes one mistake, and that very likely may happen, quite frankly. And if that happens, then that arrest gets thrown out. There'll be consequences that flow from that. Sometimes police officers make mistakes. Sometimes searches occur that are unlawful, that violate the Fourth Amendment. And when that happens, the fruits of that illegal search are thrown out, the case is thrown out. But we do know that from time to time that police officers abuse their authority, and obviously police officers receive training to make sure that doesn't happen. I, like others, are worried about the fact that you might have a racial profiling in Arizona, and of course that is something that we should all be concerned about. But I think the people in Arizona, the state officials, they worked very, very hard to ensure that racial profiling would not occur. If, in fact, everyone is looking for a law that is perfect, that would never be violated, then I think we're reaching for something that's, quite frankly, is unattainable.